bag of onions and garlic and you bake it for 20 minutes. Put it in a bag. Yeah, it's because the chemicals in it do something with the or with like something in your teeth, and it sends it all the way up to your brain.
So as we go through, we are going to be going through 2 more theories. No, you got to be in a desk. About deviant behavior today, which would bring the total number to like 5 or 6 or something like that. I just want you to keep in mind all these different theories because you're going to be given a new task today, which I do believe is one of the more popular tasks of kids who've taken this class in the previous years. So just keep them straight. There's the institutional enemy theory, and there's Merton's deviance typology, and what else we learned yesterday? That
Criminals, crime, innovators.
Well, yeah, that's all part of Merton's theory. Anyway, just keep them straight. Okay, new theory today. It's called social disorganization theory, and this is kind of fun. So this is a macro argument. Does anyone in here take macro or micro econ? Okay. What is the difference generally, just basic definition? What's the difference between macro econ and micro econ? Have I stumped you?
Is it economy on a large scale? Is macro economy on a small scale? Micro.
Exactly. So microeconomics would be how does a family spend its income? Macroeconomics would be how is the U.S. spending its income, right? Try this little experiment. Next time you're walking on, a summer road and you find a little anthill, okay, destroy it. Ha! Right? And then watch what happens. Pick one ant and just follow it. And after about 30 seconds, you will come to the conclusion, this ant is an idiot. What is wrong with this ant? Because it walks this way. No. It walks this way. No. And that ant is an idiot. But if you look at the whole colony, you will see that what they're doing is moving the eggs from the old location to a safe new location. Micro, idiots. Macro, an organized approach to saving the eggs and saving the queen or whatever like that.
What?
Human beings are idiots, but generally speaking, humanity. Okay, fine. Okay, this is a macro argument. This looks at crime from a big scale picture. So let's just start in downtown St. Paul, and let's identify that 100 years ago, so 1919-ish, World War I has just ended, whatever.
China.
Are we throwing out random countries now?
No.
Stop it. In St. Paul, people lived there. There were houses there. There were businesses there. And the people lived in St. Paul and worked in St. Paul. You lived where you worked. If you're wondering, like, well, doesn't everybody do that? I bet not. I live in Stillwater, and here I am. How many of you, obviously you live in Somerset or maybe nearby, some of you maybe live in the Osceola area, but you're in the Somerset School District. Anybody in that situation? You actually live in New Richmond, but you're in the Somerset School District. Okay, very good. But how many of you have parents that actually work somewhere else? Okay, just about all of you, okay? 100 years ago, that simply was not the thing. You lived where you worked. Everybody lived where they worked. Why would you live in one town and live in another and work in another? You know what I meant. Okay. 100 years ago, everyone lived in St. Paul. Now, that meant that the taxes you were paying for police and snow plowing benefited the community you were in. You paid the police ended up protecting you right in St. Paul. But what happened was, after World War II, people who could afford it left St. Paul and moved to what is called a Tier 1 suburb. A Tier 1 suburb. And in this case, it's Maplewood. If you were in Chicago, it might have been a city called Arlington Heights. The people lived in Maplewood, but drove to St. Paul to work. They lived in Maplewood. And as a result, they paid property taxes in Maplewood. So Maplewood had a fine police force, and St. Paul's police suffered because they just lost the tax money that is used to pay for cops because people left St. Paul, and now their tax money is going to Maplewood, not St. Paul, but just as many people during the day are in St. Paul because these people drive to St. Paul in order to work. Do you need anything? No. Okay. So the people live in Maplewood, but they drive to St. Paul. Guess what happens to St. Paul's crime level? Why?
Less police.
Fewer police, right? If the logic is there are more police, crime goes down. That means if there are less police, crime goes up. Okay? All right. Now, Maplewood starts to have a larger population. So they need things. Maybe they should build a mall. We'll call it Maplewood Mall. All right. All right. So now Maplewood Mall needs employees that pay minimum wage. So now people in St. Paul go to Maplewood to work, crappy pay, and then they drive back to St. Paul where they pay property taxes that are quite low. So St. Paul's police cannot provide the protection. And Maplewood residents drive to St. Paul and they work at like 3M or something like that. Okay. Well, as Maplewood gets more and more crowded, people say, I don't want to live here. I want to move to a tier 2 suburb. Let's call it Woodbury. Okay. So, and have you been to Woodbury? You've been to Woodbury? Okay. What are the chances that if I say this, all right, you know what? How about you and I meet tonight in Woodbury? Let's meet in downtown Woodbury. 5:00. Will you and I run into each other?
No.
No. You know why? Because Woodbury's gross. Where is Woodbury? I don't know. There's a Target over there. And there's like Dick's Sporting Goods is kind of over there. Woodbury is a pure suburb. Woodbury is a collection of streetlights and shops. We're getting beyond it, right? So now people live in Woodbury that can afford it, and then they drive to St. Paul, or some of them drive to Maplewood. Okay. Well, now the tax money that used to be in St. Paul is now going to Woodbury's McMansions. Have you seen the houses in Woodbury? Okay, they're called McMansions, right? But let's keep going. Now people are starting to move to Stillwater, which is weird. Stillwater is a weird situation because Stillwater is actually one of the oldest towns in the area. People fought in the Civil War from Stillwater. Actually, people from this area fought in the Civil War as well, right? And so here they are. They're driving inward to work and then going back outward to live. Okay. Guess what's next? Somerset. Yay! Thanks, Bridge. Now I'm a weirdo because I go
Lily
this
Walker
way.
to the office, please. Lily Walker to the office.
Right? I live in a tier 3 suburb and I work in a tier 4 suburb. I'm going the wrong way. Right? But you should see the traffic going the other way every morning. Right? You know where they're all going? 3M, the prison, the factory right there in Stillwater. Anderson Windows. Yep. How many of you have relatives that do that? Right that. Okay. But again, think about, now let's go back to St. Paul. Guess what's happened to the crime rate in St. Paul? Way up. Because the taxpayers don't live here anymore. They've flown the coop. And then they drive back to St. Paul and they complain about crappy police work and high crime rate. St. Paul is going to break a record this year. They've already had more murders this year than all of last year, and it's just barely November. Come on, St. Paul, you can do it. You can do it.
About to beat the high score.
Yes, sir.
So there's got to be a huge problem with this, but why don't we just make the whole thing pay the taxes to St. Paul?
Right. Very good. In a way, that is what some parts of the country do. I don't know if you're familiar with New York City at all, but New York City is made of these things called boroughs. Have you ever heard of the Bronx, Queens, Manhattan? What are those things? I thought it was New York.
They're boroughs.
They're boroughs. That's right. They're parts of the city. New York, when the people were framing New York, what they did was they created the city limits way beyond where people lived. because they realized early on, well, people are going to start moving out, but let's just make them still part of New York. Pretty smart. But as you travel west, that's not the case.
That would have been like the 20s or earlier, right?
Earlier. Yeah, New York was pretty old. Yeah. I think you're identifying a real problem. And I'll also throw out this is kind of an interesting theory. What inner cities have done to combat this is they'll build arenas, professional sporting arenas, right? Where do the Wild play? Do they play in Woodbury? No, they play in St. Paul. Where do the Twins play? Minneapolis. Where do the Vikings play? Right? Minneapolis. Okay, and the theory is that if you build a stadium in St. Paul, then people will go there and watch the Wild play and probably lose because they suck this year. And then afterwards, they'll go to a restaurant, right? They'll spend their money. Now, the city of St. Paul can provide better police force, not because people live here, but because they visit, right? And they spend their money on a steak after the game or whatever.
Mall of America is probably a big one too.
Mall of America is huge. Yeah. But
Wouldn't Somerset also be disproportionately further away than all the other ones because it's also over a state line?
yeah, state line does complicate things a bit, but not as much as you think. There are a number of people. I mean, I'm one of them. I live in one state and work in the other. Every year, my tax situation is incredibly complicated because I earn money in Wisconsin, but I live in Minnesota. So I have to tell the state of Minnesota that I make no income here in Minnesota. And then I tell the state of Wisconsin, here's where I make my income. But they have this thing called reciprocity where they pretend if you live in one state and work in another, they just pretend you live in one state and work in that state. Because there are plenty of people in Wisconsin who work in Minnesota, so they're in the same situation, including many of your parents, it sounds like, right? So, ask them how fun it is to fill out their tax returns every year. It's no fun, right? Because it's complicated. It's
Tax people can do that for you.
It's right. Hire people to do it for you.
Choose
Okay?
not to because of.
So the conclusion of social disorganization theory is crime goes up when there's a lack of police because there's a lack of tax money. Okay? There's a lack of people who feel pride in where they live and work. Right? If you live here but you work here, you're not as connected to either one as you otherwise would have been. I mean, there are people that live in Somerset and they work in Somerset. Somerset's their community. They know everybody. I could not tell you my neighbors' names, not one. I think his name is John.
That's a basic.
That's about it. And they live 20 feet away from me. I don't live in a rural area. I mean, there are people right next to me. He's insane. I stay away from him. He's the one that in the middle of February was walking down with just underwear on.
Dude,
Middle of February, right? Just underwear. And it's like, come on, Grandpa, let's go in. Grandpa's my dog. I have a dog named Grandpa, mostly for the conversations. Like we'll purposefully talk so older people overhear us, and my daughter will say, "Yeah, Grandpa took a dump in the garden again." And, other people will look at us like, "You let your grandpa take a dump in the yard?" Sweetie. Okay. And again, what happens is that with a lack of a connection to your own community, you're not going to church there. You're not going to social events there. There's a disconnect between where you live and where you work, which means there's a disconnect between you and your neighbor. Well, crime goes up. Crime goes up because you don't know your neighbors. And so there's a disconnect between you and other people. And so what do you care what they're up to? Right? It's not your business. That sort of thing. Okay? Kind of an interesting theory. Very good. There's one more theory that I want to. By the way, any questions? Get it?
You said the boroughs were in New York, but don't they still have a lot of these problems?
Yes,
Not quite as bad.
but not as bad as the New York in another universe that did not do that. Right? You can't compare New York to other parts of the nation. I mean, you can, but the only valid comparison would be New York as it is compared to New York as it would have been in another universe, which we currently don't have that technology to travel between universes. So we're going to have to stick with the New York we got. Okay. All right. The next theory I hinted at yesterday, it's called labeling theory. Okay, so I have a question. I think you'll understand this inherently, pretty simple. Okay. Hero, or criminal?
Criminal,
Why?
because he's bad.
Give me a specific example of something that Batman does that's bad.
Because he goes around punching mentally insane people and then he runs away.
Just on his own, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else agree with him? Batman's a criminal? Anyone want to say like, he's a hero? Or Spider-Man?
I think vigilantes are pretty cool.
Explain why you consider them to be heroic.
I don't know.
Who are their targets?
Bad people, but you know what they do is still illegal. But you know, I mean, at least they're doing illegal things for good.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
So understand that Batman does certain things, or Spider-Man, or you. You do certain things. Some people observe Batman and say, hero, he fights the bad guys. Others say, criminal, the cops should be doing that. You can't just take the law into your own hands. The difference is not with Batman, but the observer of Batman. And I said this yesterday, right? I've told you about the Reggie Larson rule. Reggie Larson, he used to wander the hallways, and I'd go out there, Reggie, where are you supposed to be? And he'd keep walking, right? And then I'd say, oh, well, it's Reggie. But Bill, if Bill were out there, I'd be out there. All right, where are you supposed to be? Where's your pass? Let's go. Well, come on, let's find out where you're supposed to be in algebra right now. Let's go. And I would treat him as a criminal. Reggie, I treated as the child of the most important person in the 5-state region. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Mr. Larson,
Oh.
there's a road named after him. Where's my road? Where's my road that's named after me? Yeah, I'm sure you're wondering the same thing. Yeah, me too. Okay. Understand that they both engaged in rule breaking. Reggie was breaking the rules and Bill was breaking the rules, but I treated one as a criminal and the other one as a not criminal. I labeled one criminal. That's why Jimmy's a criminal, because he's been labeled a criminal by the observer. The observer has labeled you a criminal. Why are some people viewed as a criminal while others who behave the same way aren't? It's because the observer looks at you and says, well, right? These two are talking to each other and these two are talking to each other. And I look at those two and say, shut up! Stop it! Pay attention! Put your phone away! Right? One of you's on your phone, and I look at you and say, I'm sure they're working on homework. Or I bet they have all their work done. Or I like you. But Christian here, you got no shot. Sorry, put your phone away. Right? I mean that. Right? So again, the difference is the observer. The observer labels you criminal. So no matter what you do, you're a criminal.
sure.
Meanwhile, good kid, right? Criminal laughs out loud, and I think you're laughing about me. But good kid laughs out loud, and I think, well, I bet there was something funny that happened over there, right? I might even join in. But over here, shut up! I label you criminal or good kid, and that dictates your life. And then what happens, which is sad, is sometimes you start to accept what you've been labeled. Well, I'm a bad kid, so no matter what I do, I have no chance. So then you start believing it. The power of labeling. If you've been labeled good kid, you'll start to believe you're a good kid. If you've been labeled bad kid, you'll start to believe you're a bad kid. So you'll actually start acting out the role, which is sad. Okay. So definition of labeling, it's the reaction, not the action.
Tried to do the joke.
The person engages in behavior, it's the same, but the reaction is different. It's how they react. The teacher sees that you're a bad kid, so no matter what you do, the bad kid does bad things. So you've just done something bad because you're a bad kid. Okay? Questions on this? It's kind of fascinating. Okay. I think I've shown you two pretty cool new theories, and that's interesting because you're being given a new topic. You're being given a new task. And I have a handout here, so I don't need to write any of this down. This is something you can actually kind of have fun with.
We're gonna go to the mall with
Oh, dude, it might be my best play ever.
Shut up.
That's right, bad kid.
Yeah. Mm.
Now, I'm not completely heartless, and so I fully realize that I'm giving you this new task. Meanwhile, you already have another task for summative, which is due Tuesday. I know. You're welcome.
I am.
I really don't think you're going to struggle with this. I honestly don't think so. Let me read through what we're looking at here, and then I'll be happy to answer questions, and then I got to show you some of the things here. So it says here, step one. Everyone have it? Everyone got it? Okay. Step one, pick your favorite theory. And there they are. They're all listed right there. There's institutional enemy. That's where people have perfectly acceptable goals, but they find other ways to achieve those goals, right? Or Merton's deviance typology. Remember, the conformists and the innovators and the revolutionaries, and maybe you want to go with that one, okay? Or there's the cultural transmission. What impacts you creates you. So dad's a criminal, you're a criminal. Dad beats up mom, you're going to beat up your girlfriend. Dad's drunk, you're a drunk. Dad's a racist, you're a racist. That's the idea of cultural transmission. Or something called differential association. You all are born with certain characteristics, and your environment dictates what happens to you. Fast, quick kid, put him in Eden Prairie, star quarterback. Put him in downtown Detroit, drug dealer. Because they have the same characteristic. Okay? Or the two theories that we learned about today. Social disorganization theory that really attempts to explain crime is higher in inner city neighborhoods because of the lack of a tax base to provide the police support necessary to prevent such crime. Or labeling theory. Okay? Pick the one that you definitely want to sort of explore. By the way, you can go with more than one if you want. Okay, and what? So step one, pick one, maybe two. And what doth one do with this? You come up with a story, okay? Fictional story. You make it up, okay? But it should be pretty cool. It says it can be written. You can make a comic book if you want. You could even act out a video play, right? What do you think Cartman and Waldog are?
A video.
That's
play.
deviant behavior, man. Take that back.
Okay, I take it back.
Okay, so it says here, your story needs to reveal why your main character engages in deviant behavior. Why? Why does Billy do that? Right? So you're going to explore this. Now, I know what's going to happen, and I've seen it before. Some of you are going to have this story of Billy and how he engages in criminal behavior, and then, the cops are going to ask Billy, well, why'd you do that? And then some expert will step in the comic book and say, well, this is an example of Merton's deviance typology, and blah, 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 blah. Stop it! Don't do that. Gross. Okay? Be creative. Like, show that Billy has a dad who spent the last 10 years in jail. And so Billy lacks a father figure and who's telling him a lack of right and wrong. So that would be cultural transmission. Or show that Billy lives in inner city Chicago, where gang activity is everywhere, so social disorganization theory. Or show that Billy actually has potential to be a pretty good basketball player, but he's not that smart, so he cheats. He gets somebody to take the ACT for him so that he can get accepted to Marquette and be the star basketball player, which would be institutional enemy, right? Perfectly acceptable goal, but illegitimate way to get that goal. Whatever. Pick one and sort of have your story explain it rather than the expert at the end explaining in big words what's going on here. Gross. Okay. So it says your story needs to show one of the theories above or more theories. You can have multiple theories if you want. Man, make Billy the worst of the worst, right? I mean, he wants to be a star athlete, but his dad's in jail and his mom's a raging racist and he lives in downtown Detroit and everyone labels him a criminal and good God, Hitler. Okay. And then there's the So make sure you're understanding what I'm about to say. So letter C, there's the distinct possibility that I will read your whole story and not have a clue what you're talking about. I will be totally confused. So you need that one additional attachment where you're explaining in clear terms, here's what's going on with Billy, and explaining which theory you were trying to get conveyed fictionally, right? Just an addendum, an attachment, explaining so that I could look and say, oh, I get it. Right? He tripped over the sidewalk, which wasn't repaired because the city he lived in lacks the tax base. So he trips and he gets mad and then he punches his sister, and there he goes off into criminal world. All because he tripped over a crack in the sidewalk. Plus it broke his mama's back.
His sister?
That's harsh.
Biological or
Mom. Okay. What I'm now showing you is not on the back because the printer is dumb. Excuse me. Your mom. Okay. Look at the requirements. It's not on here, so maybe you want to jot this down. This will, of course, be on the website if you don't want to jot it down. Or take a picture with your phone. Great. Awesome. Yep, I'm giving you permission to use that which shall not be named. Look at all of you with your phones. Deviants!
I'm not.
Criminal! Look at the requirements. Okay? Are you going to simply type up your own story? It's got to be one page, full page typed. That's 12 font New York Times. 12 font New York Times. Don't use the giant font 30. My story. No. If you decide to use a comic, I don't care if you can draw or not, but I know the difference between a carefully drawn stick figure.
That's a man.
See what you do to make it a girl? You just make the letter S a bunch of times. Just a bunch of times. And then there. A carefully drawn stick figure. Perfectly good. And what you're doing is sort of a waste of time. That you did it on the way to class this morning. I know 26 years of education tells me good. Lazy. Deviant. Okay. Now, there are also websites where you can create comics, right? You click how many slides you want per page and you can make your character. Great. If you want to do it that way, awesome. But I'm just saying you don't have to. You can make it this way if you want. Okay? If you do it, it's got to be 10 pages long, one picture per page with a sentence or two at the bottom of each page. And you're making it sort of a comic book or a children's book if you want. Johnny, Dick and Jane. Dick beats the crap out of Jane. Dick is now a deviant. Awesome.
Dick is a dick.
Okay? If you're making it live action, like you're going to be acting, I don't want it live. Mr. Potter, we're ready to do our project, and you're acting here. No. This is videotaped out in the real world. Okay? Out there. Just think Cartman and Waldog, what they're doing. Great example. Only this is going to be a little bit more focused. Right? Okay? And then again, you got to have a clarifying explanation telling me what I should have learned after observing what you just created. Okay? Are there any questions for me besides due date? Yes, dear.
Can we have partners if we're gonna?
Doesn't it say?
Does it?
Didn't I say you can have partners? Yeah, right on here it says you can work alone or with partner.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Alone or with partner. Okay. Now, what I don't know, what I haven't decided yet, and frankly, I'm going to let Melina. Good God. Yeah, as in what do you want, or yeah, as in I know what I'm doing and I'm going to fix it now. Will you please stop what you're doing? Okay. I still like you. When should this be due? Right? You have a summative that's due Tuesday. I want you to focus on that, especially if you're not very far with that. That should be your focus. I don't think this is overly difficult. I can't imagine this being something that you're laboring with a lot. It seems pretty clear. You pick a theory, you come up with a story, the story fits the theory, and then you explain how the story fits the theory. I could have this due tomorrow. I won't, because I mean, there's a pretty good chance that some of you want to be kind of creative and act out a play and make a video and
We're doing the video.
have movie shots all over town. Awesome. 1 year, I remember Blair Witch. Does the name Blair Witch Project mean anything to anybody here?
Yeah.
Okay. Or have any of you ever watched The Office?
Yes.
Okay. So they did it that way. In other words, one camera scene, right? Where the person carrying the camera, it's like you're looking out that person's eyeballs, right? And so the hand will reach out and like punch the person, right? You are that person. Awesome, right? Or I remember one where it was a newscast. They were reporting live from the scene of a terrible crime. They were investigating it. Great. Okay.
This is an example.
So what is a fair due date? Today is November 7th.
Yes.
Today is November 7th.
Next Friday.
When is a fair due date? Who do I
December
trust? I
25th.
trust Jack. So Jack,
Give you a calendar here.
Jack, I expect you to know what is a fair due date. Today is November 7th. So that would mean tomorrow is November 8th, and then what you do is you add 7 to figure out the next time it's a Friday. So next week, Friday would be the 15th. The next Friday would be the 22nd. What is a reasonable due date for when I can put this in the grade book? Keeping in mind that if you're still not done with it by that grade book, that's okay. It just goes in as a 0 until you are in fact done. What do you got?
Not next Wednesday, but the one after that.
You're making it a Wednesday. Okay, so let's see. Today is Thursday, so that means yesterday was the 6th. Plus 7 would be the 13th. Plus 7 would be the 20th. Did I figure that out right? November 20th. All right, would you just jot that down? November 20th. I think that's great. That is the date when it is due. But remember what due means. Due simply means it goes in the grade book. If you're not done with it by then, that's okay. But eventually it will. Okay. Now, just a couple other comments, and then I want to kind of let you go, and maybe you want to start thinking about this. This class is over again at 47, so we still have a good check time here. And that is this. Let's say that someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, this project, want to work together?" And so let me give you the perspective of if you're the one being asked. Okay, Billy's asking you, and you're looking at Billy, and you're thinking, ugh. You have permission to say, no, I don't want to work with you. Okay. Now, if you're Billy and you've offered and you've just been rejected, don't take it personally. Okay. Move on. Okay. This is a graded thing. And allow me to throw out this idea that some of you in here take your grades more seriously than others. So that some of you in here are going to try and latch up with someone that you know will be doing a good job. And so you want to be a wood tick and suck off the hard work of others in here. And great, if you can get that to work, awesome, way to go. But also, if you're the hard worker and you recognize that this person isn't going to do a dang thing, then say no. No, I don't want to work, right? And just move on, okay? Okay, any other questions before I allow you 15 solid minutes here to work on your summative deviant thing, which is due Tuesday, or maybe start thinking about this bad boy?
No.
Okay, one other thing I want to hand out to you.
Hey, Jack. Yeah,
Well,
we're
That
gonna
would
do
be-
a video.
that would be kind of good.
Do you have a
Wouldn't that be
wig?
funny?
Do you have a wig?
Well, I'll say
Never
yeah.
mind. We'll just
Let's
fix
show
your
it for the
dads.
class.
I'm gonna make mine.
Yes? No?
I know
No.
exactly what I'm doing.
I'm saying no to Tristan.
You want this handout that I'm giving out right now?
He wants to do a comic book.
Yeah. Go with Levi.
You can go with Tristan.
I
This
don't
is
wanna go with
simply
Tristan.
a worksheet that I will use in each unit to measure.
Yes, do a video. If you're not gonna do a video, get out of the group.
This is simply a rubric for my ability to measure your mastery of all things deviant behavior. This is what I will use to grade you, to evaluate whether or not you have mastered the material. We have to fix it because there is a missing thing here. So you'll notice that there are two ways that I'm going to measure your mastery of all things deviant behavior. One is an objective test. That objective test will ask you to do those things. You will be in that objective test asked to correctly identify different sociological theories about deviant behavior, those 6 theories. You will also be asked to identify what are some different types of criminal behavior. We have not even started that yet, but we're going to talk about white-collar crime and blue-collar crime and violent crime and hate crime, international crime, gang-related crime, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to start talking about that stuff. And then how society gets you to behave. That'll all be on your objective test. But this storybook is also an attempt to explain why people engage in deviant behavior. So right under objective test, you could just put the word storybook, because that's another way that I'm going to measure your understanding of different theories. So just add the word storybook right there. And then the next thing is the assignment that's due Tuesday, right? Whether you're writing a paper or doing a Google presentation, what you're doing is taking a topic that has a yes or no aspect to it, and you're presenting both sides and then ultimately siding with one and rejecting the other. So that is the second output from you. Okay. Keep this piece of paper, and then when you are turning in your assignment, whenever, you will be turning this in as well. If you lose it, by the way, I have plenty of answers. Yeah. All right, you have the rest of the hour, about 15 minutes to accomplish.
But I use the laptop.
And it's gonna be on my phone because I have a video editing
I
thing.
have you can use
And I'm
this
gonna
right here.
update it.